Can you imagine living in a small town where there's a 1 in 9 chance of you being the victim of a serious crime? A town where even popular vloggers are shot dead? That's an actual place in the USA where it seems nobody is untouched by violence. We'll talk about that town later, but let's start with places that are only very dangerous as opposed to unbelievably, ridiculously, incredibly dangerous. Number 15. Battle Creek, Michigan. We'll clarify something first. To fit the criteria of this show, we'll say by small we mean less than a population of 50,000 people. The data we'll use is from the FBI. When the FBI counts violent crime, it means murder and non-negligent manslaughter, sexual misconduct, robbery, and aggravated assault. The U.S. Bureau of Statistics describes non-negligent manslaughter as intentionally and without legal justification causing the death of another when acting under extreme provocation. Okay, let's start. For a show about violent crime, we couldn't pick a better place to start than a town named Battle Creek. The name relates to an incident in 1824 when a couple of Native American men had a violent altercation with some white settlers. But what Battle Creek is more well known for is the fact that it's the home of the Kellogg Company. That's why it became known as Cereal City. We're surprised Kellogg never named a cereal Captain Crunch or possibly Unlucky Charms, because they would be fitting names. In Michigan, there are 4.95 crimes per 1,000 people, but in Battle Creek, there are 12.08 crimes per 1,000. The entire population of Battle Creek is just over 50,000, so it's barely made this list. You have a 1 in 83 chance of being the victim of violent crime there. The most recent data reported 7 murders, 57 instances of sexual misconducts, 38 robberies, and 530 assaults. Many towns with 200,000 have 0 murders and 0 reports of sexual misconduct, although you might get the odd assault. Michigan has quite a few crime hotspots such as Detroit, Grand Rapids, and Flint, but those places aren't classified as small towns. They would struggle to compete with Battle Creek anyway. Flint is home to 95,212 people and had 1,284 violent crimes. Detroit's population is 663,502, and it saw 13,040 violent crimes, while Grand Rapids has just over 200,000 people, and it experienced 1,286 violent crimes. We'll leave you with a recent headline concerning Battle Creek, which tells us 14-year-old charged in the shooting death of a Battle Creek Central student. Battle Creek can hold its own in the crime stakes, but as you'll see later, there are much worse small towns out there. Number 14. Paragould, Arkansas. The U.S. violent crime rate shot up over the last few years, likely because of the chaos caused by the pandemic. The murder and non-negligent manslaughter rate in 2019 was just 5.1 per 100,000 people. In 2014, it was just 4.4. But in 2020, it climbed to 6.7, 2021 to 6.9 per 100,000. The numbers aren't all in yet for 2022, but it's looking like it was similar to 2021, a violent year, although not as bad as the naughty 90s and the extreme 80s. In Paragould, Arkansas, a town with a population of just 29,000, murder is not common. In fact, the FBI statistics say there were no murders when they collected the data the last time, but there were 26 reports of sexual misconduct, 8 robberies, and 328 assaults. Like Battle Creek, if you live there, you have a 1 in 83 chance of becoming the victim of a violent crime. A recent news report warned residents the Paragould Police Department is urging you to be safe as more crimes have plagued the city. It talked about one day recently when there were 2 shootings and a stabbing within 24 hours. Police say residents had been calling them asking, "Should we be concerned?" Maybe residents of this next place should be more concerned. Number 13. Dillingham, Alaska. Only about 2,300 people live in Dillingham, Alaska, where people do a lot of fishing and it seems fighting. The thing with such small towns out in the middle of nowhere is if there's a criminal element to them, residents are very likely to become a victim of those elements. In fact, reports state that in the northern part of this town, residents have a 1 in 28 chance of becoming a victim of crime. But if they live in the western part of the town, it's more like a 1 in 10 chance. As crime statistics go, that's grim. It's grimmer when you learn that in 2007 it had the highest per capita sexual misconduct rate in the US at 1 incident for every 103.9 people. The latest crime news story we could find told us a 59-year-old man in 2023 got 13 years in prison for exactly this type of crime. Per capita income for Dillingham is just $21,537, well below the U.S. average of $68,309. In Dillingham, 10.1% of families and 11.7% of the population live under the poverty line. As the Brits say, it's grim up north. You'll hear more about British violence later. In this next town, the thing you ought to fear is a bullet in the head. Number 12. Spartanburg, South Carolina. Spartanburg in name, maybe Spartanburg in nature, or at least the Sparta part of the word. This town of around 38,000 people used to be famous for its textile mills, but that was before deindustrialization happened. There were 585 violent crimes in this town when the FBI released its data, and a further 2,356 property crimes. That's a lot for a place this small. It means that there are 15.23 violent crimes for every 1,000 people and 61.35 property crimes for 1,000 people. In general, if you live there, there's a 1 in 66 chance you'll become the victim of a violent crime. There were 8 murders, 77 robberies, 27 reports of sexual misconduct, and 473 assaults, according to the last data. The local police chief recently said the opioid problem has been a big issue where crime is concerned, but he also said people were not locking their cars enough and firearms were being stolen from them. Believe it or not, though, even with these dazzling crime statistics, the crime problem in Spartanburg has improved in the last decade. Still, in 2022, 130 firearms were stolen and 78 were taken from vehicles. The chief also had this to say: "The opioid problem is significant here in the city, and oftentimes it starts with prescription drugs, but then eventually flows into your heroin, your cocaine, that type of thing. The fentanyl, which is extremely deadly. Things could be worse." Number 11. Henderson, North Carolina. For a place of just 15,000 people, Henderson has quite a few famous people to its name. The musician Benny King and the talk show host Charlie Rose both came from Henderson, living in what's a small place of just 8.2 square miles. On paper, sounds like a lovely part of America. Still, with the average income being just $23,745 and about 1/4 of the population living below the poverty line, Henderson has its fair share of problems. The data tells us there were 246 violent crimes as well as 639 property crimes the last time the FBI collated its crime statistics list. In this small town, not much bigger than what most of the world would call a village, there were 5 murders, 8 reports of sexual misconduct, 39 robberies, and 194 assaults. If you live there, you have a 1 in 61 chance of becoming a victim of a violent crime. That's the same as North Carolina's Laurinburg, a town of 15,000 people that's also one of the poorest places in the U.S. There was more murder there, 10, but fewer robberies. While poverty and violence correlate a lot, and we mean a lot, crime rates are more complicated than people not having money. The per capita income of Emporia, Kansas is a lowly $17,485. 22.2% of the people live below the poverty line, including 22.9% of those under the age of 18, the ones statistically more likely to murder someone. In Emporia, you have a 1 in 667 chance of becoming the victim of a violent crime. That's the national average, believe it or not. Many small towns are like that, but as you'll see in this show, often where there's poverty, there's violence, just not all the time. Let's put these numbers into perspective. In the US, you have a 1 in 11.5 million chance of being killed by a shark. Your chance of dying from a terrorist attack is 1 in 45 million. The odds of you dying in a plane crash are 1 in 205,552. The odds of being killed by lightning are 1 in 114,195. Meanwhile, the odds of winning the Powerball lottery are 1 in 292 million. One of the most recent crime news stories we could find was from March 2023, which reported a woman and 2 men have been charged with murder in the shooting deaths of 2 men in a car last month. You might think, well, all small towns have news about murders. In fact, no, they don't. Just 1% of U.S. counties are responsible for a massive 42% of America's murders. Most towns don't experience the ultra-violence you'll hear about today, which is about to get much worse. Number 10. Sauk Village, Illinois. At just 4 square miles with a population of not even 10,000, you'd think not much can happen in Sauk Village, about 28 miles from downtown Chicago. You would be wrong. Crime statistics make this place sound like the 1980s classic dystopia movie Escape from New York. If Snake Plissken were in Sauk Village, he'd hide in a cupboard and cry himself to sleep. With that tiny population, it still had 529 violent crimes. According to the latest data, it had 170 property crimes, so this place is more about violence than stealing. It sounds crazy, but the numbers mean residents have a 1 in 18 chance of being the victim of a violent crime and a 1 in 14 chance of being the victim of violent or property crime. That's compared to a 1 in 253 chance in the rest of Illinois for violent crime only. Sauk might want to open some anger management clinics in the town, since it was reported there were 490 incidents of aggravated assault. If you add up the number of assaults in the USA's top 100 safest towns, the number would still be less than the number of assaults in Sauk. There were just 2 murders, but still, there are only 10,000 people. Just recently, a news headline stated, "Young man shot dead in front yard." You can see signs around Sauk that claim it's a village of pride and progress, but with 27% of people living below the poverty line and 52% of people under 18 living below the poverty line, maybe that progress needs to get into second gear. Number 9. Espanola, New Mexico. This town's claim to fame is the fact that it's home to the Los Alamos National Laboratory, where the atomic bomb was made at the end of the World War. It's now famous for crime. Again, it's a tiny place, only 8.34 square miles. Just over 10,000 people are living there, in what looks like the middle of nowhere. The biggest contributor to this crime problem is drugs. Lots and lots of drugs. There are over 1.2 million violent crimes in the U.S. every year, or thereabouts. Espanola only had 353 of them, plus 383 property crimes, but then again, it is just a blip on the landscape. If you come from there, you have a 1 in 30 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime, compared to a 1 in 127 chance if you come from New Mexico in general. A crime occurs roughly every 7 hours in Espanola. Not all neighborhoods are alike. Reports state that if you live in the east, you have a 1 in 13 chance of being a victim of crime. The type of neighborhood you live in means a lot when it comes to violent crime. News reports about murders often feature places of poverty. Drug trafficking is turning the place inside out. The Los Angeles Times asked in 2023, "Can this town save itself from fentanyl addiction?" This is how the writer described his time in the downtown area. Kids played in trailer parks, contractors loaded pickups, cars came and went from a methadone clinic, men wearing hoodies and expectant gazes drifted toward a house with barred windows. And this is what a resident told that writer. "I've had knives pointed at me, pipes swung at me. It's insane how much has changed in the last year. It's scary. We have generational drug use, generational trauma. Half the kids I went to school with didn't have parents. They were dead or in jail or gone." Number 8. Anniston, Alabama. Before we talk about Anniston, here are some general U.S. crime statistics. In 2021, there were 14.6 gun deaths per 100,000 people in the U.S. That amounted to 48,830 total gun deaths from all causes, 23% more than 2019. The numbers in 2022 aren't completely clear yet since it takes time to get those things straightened out, but the data seems to show that numbers for 2022 were very similar to the 2021 numbers. Some U.S. states have much higher rates of gun death than others. Mississippi in 2021 was 33.9 per 100,000. Next in order were Louisiana 29.1, New Mexico 27.8, Alabama 26.4, and Wyoming 26.1. By comparison, the UK had 0.3 gun deaths per 100,000 according to recent data. Some other countries we looked at were Mexico 16 per 100,000, Canada 2.1, Australia 1, France 2.7, Germany 0.9, Finland 2.4, and Spain at 0.6. The U.S. easily has the highest rate of gun ownership in the world, about 120 guns for every 100 people. The vast majority are black market guns. Interestingly, FBI estimates say the number of guns bought in the USA in 2018 was only about 13 million, and 13 million again in 2019. Still, in 2020, that shot up to 22 million. It was about 19 million in 2021 and 16 million in 2022. From 2000 to 2010, gun sales never went above 10 million per year. Guns might not kill people, as the saying goes, but they definitely help, especially the illegal ones. An ATF report said 54% of traced crime guns were illegally bought but stolen and used in a crime. More than 1 million guns were stolen from 2017 to 2021, although the report said many people don't report it, so the number would be much higher. In 2021, 4,740 murders were gun murders, but the FBI said the type of firearm wasn't known. The agency didn't find a gun. Then you have many so-called ghost guns, weapons that don't have a serial number and thus are untraceable. Okay, so Anniston, Alabama has just over 21,000 people, but there were 162 violent crimes and property crimes numbered at 1,094. There were 7 murders, 7 reports of sexual misconduct, 30 robberies, and 118 assaults. So, in relative terms on this list, assaults weren't so high, but murders and property crimes were very high for such a small place. Your chance of being the victim of a violent crime is just 1 in 131, but where property crimes are concerned, it's 1 in 19. Recent news reports in 2023 include a man found dead in a ditch believed to have been murdered and a headline that read, "3 arrested in kidnapping attempted murder case." Number 7. Kotzebue, Alaska. In Kotzebue, a town with just over 3,000 people, 30 miles from the Arctic Circle, you have about a 1 in 30 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. That's almost as bad as it gets. The more recent data says there were 111 violent crimes over the course of a year. There were also 2 murders. Looking at recent news reports, which include assaults, kidnapping, murder, and violent crimes against children, there's certainly a lot going on for 3,000 people. Fremont, California has a population of 235,881 people, yet no reported murders. In Frisco, Texas, no reported murders for 162,917 people. Vancouver, Washington was free of murder even though its population was stated to be 174,912. Let's now see what's going on in small-town Illinois. Number 6. East St. Louis, Illinois. In Illinois, we could talk about Alton, population 30,000 plus, a once thriving industrial town where you have a 1 in 177 chance of becoming the victim of a violent crime, according to the latest statistics. Danville in Illinois is also crime-ridden with a 1 in 66 chance of facing violent crime, while Mount Vernon and Champaign get high scores, as do Springfield, Rockford, and Chicago, but they don't meet our small-town criteria. We've chosen East St. Louis, Illinois, a population of 18,000 and a bit. Most of Illinois' small towns have 0 murders, or maybe 1 or 2, perhaps 5 at the most. So when we saw East St. Louis had 36 murders the last time the FBI made its list, we knew we had to include it in this show. It said only 25% of those murders are charged in a criminal court. The U.S. national average is 60%. East St. Louis is another deindustrialized place on the list, where the mostly African-American people live on some of the worst wages you'll find in the U.S. The per capita income there is a piddling $11,169, with the median household income just $21,324. 31.8% of families live below the poverty line, but 48.6% of people under 18 live in poverty. Reports say these kids have the worst school system in the state, or at least they said that just a few years ago. In 2020, 54.13% of households were run by a single parent. In 2021, throughout the U.S., 4,920 murders were committed by males aged 20 to 29, way higher than any other age range. People aged 10 to 19 and 30 to 29 accounted for 2,497 murders and 2,924 murders, respectively. There are even warnings about this place telling tourists to be careful, just like you'd find on websites about Afghanistan or certain parts of Iraq. When the data was published, on top of the 36 murders, there were 27 reports of sexual misconduct, 32 robberies, and 173 assaults. Murders are sky high, but assaults are quite low, so there's only a 1 in 95 chance of being the victim of violent crime. Early March 2023, the mayor announced there'd only been 6 homicides in the first 2 months of the year. It's not East St. Louis anymore, it's East Safe Louis, he said. Actually, 6 murders in January and February for a tiny town is still relatively high. This headline from May is similar to many headlines from this part of the U.S. Coroner identifies 2 men slain in East St. Louis home. Another news story about a boy aged 11 was shot when 2 women argued over clothes. Despite the efforts to clean this town up, it seems that East St. Louis is still a very violent place. This next place isn't so great either. Number 5. West Memphis, Arkansas. West Memphis, perhaps famous for locking up innocent young men, is also known for its violence. Over the years, it's typically been right down at the bottom of safety indexes. Right now, the latest data is saying you have a 1 in 37 chance of being a victim of violent crime, which again is a startling statistic. You have a 1 in 93 chance of dying in a vehicle accident in the U.S., so our advice is don't drive in West Memphis. The data shows there were 648 violent crimes and 953 property crimes in a town with just 26,000 people. It's very different from St. Louis, though, where there were 7 murders, 33 reports of sexual misconduct, 50 robberies, and 558 assaults. One of the latest news headlines said, West Memphis residents concerned about recent crime. Other articles talked about a man being found in a burning car, suspected of being shot, a man who'd earlier survived what was described as a brutal carjacking. Another story featured a 15-year-old boy shot down in a hail of bullets outside an apartment complex. Number 4. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. We should also talk about Pine Bluff in Arkansas, where for 41,000 people, there were a shocking 23 murders, 36 reports of sexual misconduct, 56 robberies, and 710 assaults. In terms of your chance of being a victim of violent crime, totals 1 in 49. Some interesting facts about Arkansas are that it has the highest rate of teenage pregnancy in the U.S., along with Mississippi. About 40% of black children live in poverty, along with 34% of Hispanic children and 17% of white children. An incredible 247,000 children in Arkansas live in single-parent households. It has the third highest incarceration rate at 559 per 100,000, behind Louisiana at 564 per 100,000, and on top, Mississippi 575 per 100,000. On top of the 825 violent crimes in Pine Bluff, there were 2,348 property crimes, which means a 1 in 17 chance of becoming a victim of property crime. As we said, in the U.S., there are about 6.2 murders per 100,000, which is high in global terms, but in Pine Bluff, there are 56.5 murders per 100,000 people, which is high for the medieval age. And it makes cartel-infested Mexico look safe. Pine Bluff has a violent history. In 1866, there was a mass lynching here of 24 African Americans. In the 1960s, civil rights demonstrators protesting about segregation were shot. According to Forbes, in the 2000s, it was on the top 10 list of poorest places in the USA. These days, 45.6% of people under the age of 18 live in poverty. As we were making this show, a news story headline was, "Two juveniles held without bond for capital murder." Right below it was a story saying, since March there have been 4 people under 18 years shot and killed in the city. Another headline was 2 dead, 2 injured in Pine Bluff shooting. 21-year-old suspect in custody. These were just the recent stories. U.S. soldiers in war zones often don't see that much action in the space of a few weeks. That still doesn't beat this next place. Number 3. Florida City. Next up is Florida City. We imagine you knew we wouldn't get through this show and not have anywhere in Florida on the list. In fact, there are lots of small towns in Florida that have very high crime rates, including Opa-locka, where you have a 1 in 48 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. In Cocoa, there were just 19,000 people and you have a 1 in 91 chance, which is still very high. But the winner in the Sunshine State is Florida City, a place where 13,000 people get on by wages that would struggle to feed a large dog for a year. The per capita income here is just $8,270. 43.3% of Florida City residents and 41.7% of families live below the poverty line. It's 57.1% for those under the age of 18. Poverty is a rampant problem here, and while poverty isn't the direct cause of violence, it certainly exists a lot where people resort to hurting other people. In recent years, Florida City has claimed the first place on the list of most violent places in the USA, but not this year. There were 337 violent crimes here and 682 property crimes, so you have a 1 in 38 chance of being the victim of a violent crime and a 1 in 19 chance of reporting a property crime. A recent news story is about a man who did some awful things to his 3 children that resulted in one of them having to be airlifted to a hospital. The man told the cops he was on Molly, which is strange given Molly's supposed to make people feel loved up. We guess not in Florida City. Okay, last 2. Number 2. Monroe, Louisiana. In Monroe, where there are about 47,000 people, there were 19 murders, 9 reports of sexual misconduct, 111 robberies, and a whopping 1,105 assaults. Yet again, people live on way less money than most people do in the U.S. Per capita income is $24,061, but 36.8% of Monroe's folks live at or below the poverty line. That goes up to 54.1% for people under the age of 18. There's a 1 in 38 chance you'll become the victim of a violent crime, and an unbelievable 1 in 18 chance you'll be the victim of a property crime. Even for Louisiana, where crime is famously high, these are really shocking numbers. Just to give you some more perspective, in the UK, in Greater Manchester, a place whose murderous gangs once earned the city the nickname Gunchester, there were only 46 homicides reported in 2022. The population is 2.8 million. 620,000 people are living in poverty. In West Yorkshire, home to large industrial rough-and-tumble cities such as Leeds and Bradford, and what the press called the crime-ridden town of Huddersfield, there's a total population of 2.3 million. Still, there were only 33 homicides for the entire year throughout all the cities, towns, and villages in West Yorkshire, compared to Monroe's 19. In New South Wales in Australia, population 8 million. Home to the capital Sydney and its 5 million plus population, there were 94 victims of homicide throughout the entire state. Recent Monroe news stories include a man charged with murdering 4 people in a house fire, a young man shot dead, a woman who stabbed her father after watching the movie Chucky, In fact, there are a lot of murder stories for 2023, so this could be a really bad year for Monroe. A local news outlet said in February, over the past few days, the city of Monroe has been plagued with shootings, leaving several victims behind, some of whom have died. Number 1. Bessemer, Alabama. In Alabama, there are plenty of places just a bit too big to get on our crime list, such as Mobile, 1 in 36 chance of being a victim of violent crime; Birmingham, 1 in 48; tiny Calera, 1 in 45. Still, it's Bessemer that can be the not very proud town that takes the biscuit for crime. There were 850 violent crimes reported and an absolutely staggering 2,032 property crimes in a town that has only 26,000 people. This means you have a 1 in 30 chance of being the victim of a violent crime, but a 1 in 13 chance of becoming the victim of a property crime. You have a 1 in 9 chance of being the victim of one of those crimes in Bessemer. We guess the residents here always have a topic to discuss when they meet for a drink, if they can afford a drink. The median household income is just $23,066 and $28,230 for a family. The per capita income for Bessemer is just $12,232. Just so you know, per capita means the average per person, while the median is in the middle. 24.2% of families and 27.2% of the entire town live below the poverty line, including 37.8% of people under the age of 18. This is a place that once had thriving industries, including mining and steelmaking, but those days are well gone. It's now famous for being a #1 crime hotspot and for once being home to a chicken named Matilda, who won the world's oldest living chicken prize from the Guinness World Records in 2004. She was stolen 6 times on her way to victory. Just kidding, but it wouldn't be surprising given the statistics. One of the popular types of YouTube channels these days features people running around with a camera exposing the poorest places in the US. A 46-year-old man did that in Bessemer in 2021 and was shot to death outside a motel. His channel of choice was actually TikTok, where he had 325,000 followers. His wallet was missing when his body was discovered. Other very recent news stories from Bessemer include someone being murdered by a 22-year-old man over a DoorDash order, as well as the murder of a 20-year-old man and a bunch of other violent attacks. That's the end of the list today. We know there are other towns we could have mentioned, but you can tell us about those in the comments section. Be safe out there, people. Now you need to watch how Belgium became the cocaine capital of the world, or have a look at real reason why 50% of murders happen here.